Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And before we get into today's pod, as always, I wanted to refer people to my website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. We've got over 185 really amazing podcasts that are there that you can find. You can also find the pods on iTunes. I would really appreciate a ratings and review. It helps elevate the popularity of the show so people can hear more stories about these amazing people doing incredible things like my guest today. Also, we're recording this on February 4th. It will come out in a month or so. And we continue to fundraise with my philanthropy work. Mount Everest, the Lhotse Challenge. The goal originally was $27,940, which represents the height of Lhotse, which I'll also be trying to accomplish along with Everest when I head over to Nepal in early April. But we've actually gone past that number, and so we continue to find and climb more summits. The NFL threw in a little bit of money. The Raiders threw in some money. So appreciative to all the individuals who have also helped with that cause. And also, please remember that you can also watch, and there's a follow my journey button on the website, markpattisonnfl.com. And you could actually see me ... going up the mountain on this Garmin device that's somehow or another hooked into the technology of my website, which I have no idea how that all happened, but it did. So on that note, I want to get into today's guest. His name is Bill Burke. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be on your program, Mark. It's a great program. And it's a great cause, by the way. I donated to your cause, and I wish you the best, and God bless you and Amelia.
Thank you so much. Every day, so much of this was initially about me trying to climb out of a dark place, which I put a big goal, which then led to climbing these mountains around the world. But it's kind of come full circle on really reshining the light and being able to help others, not just myself and going on top of a mountain, as you know, and celebrating that, but also my daughter who has epilepsy and other people, these military people. We partner with Higher Ground, and there's so many military with cognitive issues and adaptive things that have gone on in their life, which they've had a lot of healing. And so if there's any way in some small bit and piece that I can help redirect again the light that has been shown on me a little bit to help others, it's just a wonderful thing to do, and I love being involved. So I appreciate that. We were starting to chat a few minutes ago, and I was starting to tell this story. And you are one of the most amazing people that are on the planet. And I think that if we had more guys like you and you had your mindset, the world would be a better place. I really believe that.
That's very kind of you, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're gonna for all the people, we're gonna get into all of his climbing all over the world. He's and really a lot of the stuff he didn't start till later in life after you retired, from kayaking to motorcycles to bungee cord jumping, all this just great stuff. How old are you now? 77?
78. I'll be 79 in March.
Okay, there you go. So you're almost 79, and you probably have the heart of when you were 50 or 40 or everything else. I'm sure that's part of your MO.
I like to think it that way, but it has been great. I've had a great life.
Yeah, I mean, look, you live life with gusto, and that is like every letter in that word gusto is capitalized, and it's guys like you, and I mean this sincerely, that really inspire me. And I want to tell you a quick story and how I see you line up is first of all for everybody that's out there. I've had this thing about action creates reaction. And I never knew even what a podcast was. And somebody else came to me and they podcasted me. And I'm like, I think I can do this. And then, here we go. Going around the world, Bill, as you have done, and all these different expeditions and all the amazing people that you have met along that journey. 3.5 years ago, I'd come over to Sun Valley, Idaho. And being from the state of Washington, we grew up with the Whitaker brothers. Of course, Jim Whittaker was the first American to ever climb Mount Everest. I think back in 1970 or something. I might be off by a couple of years. And then his brother also tried to climb, but had a very successful business with his mountaineering up on Mount Rainier. And so I go into one of the popular bars here in Sun Valley, and who walks by me is Lou Whitaker. And I to the table, I go, oh my God, this is, this person. And they go, well, who's that? And I go, this guy's like the Paul McCartney of climbing. And they go, are you serious? And I said, yes. And they go, you got to go meet him. So I just spin around and I run out and I grab him. I deliver, who I am and what I do in 30 seconds. And he kind of sizes me up. This guy's 90 years old, and he started pushing me around and sizing me up. And this guy was built like a rock, right? And I just turned around after we departed, and I just said, I want to be like that guy. And I've got to know and climb with Ed Viesters and Conrad Anker and, these other ones that because I put myself in the arena, I've been able to meet people like you.
Well, that's really nice of you to say. And although I have a hard time envisioning him pushing around an NFL player of your size and talent. So that's a little hard to envision, but I guess he's a big guy, but not as big as you.
Well, it all happened and it was real. And the point of the story is just about, I think we all need mentors. And I want to ask you about that here in a second. We all need mentors. And within that mentorship is not just a mentor, but somebody who has had success and somebody that you want to emulate, and they have the same values and everything else that you want to have. If you don't already have them, that's something that you want to achieve someday. And I looked at his lifestyle. I looked at him. I looked at his age and his vitality. And it was just that's the person that I want to become. And so I turned around and I think I went back and I bought a house that month. And I moved my whole life to Sun Valley. And it's just, again, it's just more that was my roadmap. For you, about to turn 79, and when this whole light went on for you after you retired sometime a number of years ago now, maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago at 60, after a long career in law, was there somebody out there or individuals that you looked at and you said, you know what, I love what you're doing, and they kind of help guide the path for you?
Not in mountaineering, Mark. In the law, I did. I had mentors in the law that really helped me have a wonderfully fun and successful law career. I practiced law for 45 years all over the world at offices with a big international law firm in a variety of different cities. And I had mentors when I was a young lawyer and associate in these firms that I looked up to that really helped my career. And I had a great, great career in the law. But when I retired at age 60 in 2003, I decided now I got to figure out what I do next, because I'm not going to go home and sit in front of a television. I'm a type A personality. I love adventure and risk. I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie in that respect. And so I decided to figure out what would come next. And I always loved the mountains, and there was no figure that I was following there because it was all new to me. I just retired and I was trying to figure out what's the next chapter of my life going to be. And I'd always, like I said, had an interest in the mountains, loved the mountains. I hadn't done any climbing at all. But I then decided to take a climbing course in just outside of Seattle with Alpine Ascents, a 6-day course that really helped me, and I really enjoyed it. And I just progressed from there to the 7 summits. So I didn't really have a figure I was looking up to. There was nobody that was encouraging me in that way. It was all sort of self-made because it was all so new to me. And like I said, I didn't really know when I retired what I was going to do. So I took that course, and there's certainly folks that I've climbed with, guides and whatnot, that I would view as mentors after I started that, helped me learn how to be a better climber. And so I had mentors in that respect, but I didn't get started that way. And I kind of learned it on my own.
Yeah. I mean, however you get there, you got there. And like you said, you had that internal self-drive from, I think you went to Stanford, and then, in business all over the world and having a successful career. I think one of the things too, which is kind of surprising a little bit, even though Southern California, you have to kind of search it out, Big Bear and Mammoth, you have to kind of get to it. When you're in Seattle, you're kind of in that community. REI started up there, and a lot of those famous climbers, I just happened to grow up because I was a product of my environment in that setting. I know that after you took that course, then shortly after you climbed Mount Rainier, it's the kind of the centerpiece, the Emerald Jewel in the state of Washington, 14,500 feet roughly. Was your next mountain after that Denali McKinley, as they used to call it?
Yes, it was. I finished, actually the year I took the climbing course, I decided I'm going to come back to Washington that same year. It was 2001. Now I'm going to climb Mount Rainier. And so I did. And when I realized I could make it on a big time mountain, Mount Rainier is a big time, big league mountain. And when I was able to succeed on Rainier and I enjoyed it, I thought, well, what's the next mountain going to be? And I'd heard about Mount McKinley, as you say, it's now called Denali. And so I said, that's going to be my next big mountain. And it was kind of interesting because one of the guides that was on that trip that I took up Rainier told me, no, I think you need to try out some other alpine peaks, smaller and not as challenging as McKinley. That's a really tough mountain. And maybe you need to go to the volcanoes in Mexico, or you can go with me here and there. And I listened to him and thanked him. And that next year I went to McKinley and summited McKinley. I just felt like I was ready for it. And I wasn't going to be told that it's not something I'm capable of. And I felt like I had the experience from the courses I took, or the course I took in Seattle, and the experience I had on Rainier to give it a shot, and I did, and it was a great trip, very successful. We had a great time.
Well, I mean, look, I have been fortunate enough to stand on top of the mountain, and I would say, what were you thinking, right? Just because that mountain is a beast. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment for you, but there are so many more things that you got to deal with. I mean, Mount Rainier can be a beast too, but it's just, it's just not in the same league as Denali. I mean, it's a tough mountain. You gotta carry all that weight. 137 pounds plus. What's that? Pull a sled. Yeah.
Pull a sled. You got the weight on your back, and you're pulling a sled, and you're because it's so far north, it's extremely cold, very unpredictable weather. Yeah. I think it has the largest vertical gain of any of the 7 summits. So it's a tough mountain. And we had some interesting experiences on that mountain that made it really fun.
Well, look, half the time it's Mother Nature that plays a big factor in all this. I was up there in 2017, and we were pushed back by minus 80 degree weather, and I was stuck at that 14,000 foot camp that you've been to. And so I had to come back next year, and I was so pissed in kind of a healthy way, from the standpoint of I had to actually go back, and I was just like, okay, now I have to carry all the weight up to 14,000 feet and then go forward again. And there's, it's just like, is this actually going to happen or not? Yeah. So, the bottom line is it was just a beast of a mountain for you to take that on, at the particular time. I want to kind of jump over, because there's so much content here that I want to get into with you. And I want to jump to Everest. And the reason why I want to jump to Everest is because that's where I'm headed here. I actually leave March 30th out of LAX and then head to Nepal. You've actually not only done it from the Nepal side, which is known as the South, but also from the North side, which is going through Tibet. What was that experience? I know there's the Kumba ice field, there's that difference, but give the audience a sense of doing the South and experiencing that culture versus doing the North and experiencing that culture and that mountain, what the differences are and what similarities exist.
Sure. So as you point out, Mount Everest straddles 2 countries. On its north flank is Tibet, and the south flank is in Nepal. And it's a very, very different experience on both the south approach and the north approach. So for the south approach, as an example, you get to trek up to the base camp. It's a 35-mile trek. It's one of the most fun parts of the trip, at least it was for me, because you stop in the villages, you see how the people live, you are enhanced by their culture and their religion. You're able to order off of a menu, and it's just really fun. It's about a 6-day trip because you're acclimatizing, and you get a lot of interaction with the people and the little villages. And I just loved the trek as much as anything. On the north approach, by way of contrast, you drive across the border from Nepal to Tibet, and you cross the Friendship Bridge there, and you drive all the way into base camp. So there's no 35-mile trek to base camp. You drive into base camp, you set up your camps there, and so it's a much easier approach to get into. Other differences are on the south approach, you really don't see Mount Everest very much until you get right up the mountain and close to it. It's blocked by these huge peaks that surround it in Nepal, and so you don't really get to enjoy the view from the south approach as much as you do on the north. On the north, by way of contrast, you see the north face of Mount Everest, which is so awesome and so awe-inspiring and so beautiful. You see that whole north approach, the north face of Mount Everest, the whole time you're on the trip. And so that makes it more appealing because the views are better. There's other differences. I think the north approach is tougher to climb than the south approach. I found it tougher anyway, because you're up higher on the north approach a lot longer than you are in the south approach. You spend a lot of your time on the north side at advanced base camp, which is about 20,000 feet, whereas base camp on the south side is about 17,600. So you're up higher on the mountain on the north approach than you are on the south, and that altitude really beats up on you bad. It just takes its toll when you're in that thin air. And the weather on the north approach is a lot more unpredictable and worse than it is the south. I don't know the reason for that, but it's a pretty well-known fact that it is worse. So you get into a lot worse weather on the north approach than the south. There's no rescue on the north approach. The Chinese will not allow any flights in or near the mountain on the north approach. So if you get into trouble on the north side, up, especially if it's up high, you got to make your way down to base camp and get to a hospital by jeep or car or whatever you have. On the south side, as you'll find out when you go there, they have helicopters that run back and forth between Kathmandu and Everest Base Camp all the time, taking injured climbers out and sick climbers and bringing supplies in. And they're doing rescues on the south side, almost as high now as Camp 2. Oh. So there's a lot of opportunity for rescue on the south side that you don't have on the north approach. So that's another big difference. And also on the north approach, the distances from the camps to the summit are a lot longer than the south. On the south, it's steeper. So you move up on the south approach, it's much steeper. So you move up, for example, from Camp 4 on summit day to the summit. It's a very steep approach up to the southeast ridge, which is more difficult because of that. But on the other hand, if you get into trouble on the south approach, you can get down faster because it's not so far to travel. On the north approach, it's a very long way from the summit back to Camp 2 or Camp 1. So there's a lot of differences between the two. The most popular approach, as you know, is the south approach. Most of the teams use that now. And I don't think the north is even open this year, and they closed it. Yep. Yeah, so you don't have a choice anyway. But they're very different, and that's why I wanted to do it from both sides, just to see what the difference is and enjoy it. But I would say the trip you're taking is the most fun, and largely because you get to interact with the people so much more and see how they live and see the children and how they live in their culture. And you're really imbued with it the whole trip. And you meet so many different kinds of people when you're at base camp, from every team, from every country. And that's fun.
Certainly, records are always made to be broken, as we all know. And at the time when you did this, you were the oldest, I don't know if that still stands today, but you were the oldest person, American, to ever climb. And the thing I just love about it, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm attempting also to be the oldest to do both the Lhotse and Everest, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I just want to make it, right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that I'm 59, right, going on like 20, and you're 79, you're 78, going on 40. I don't know what the number is, but it's having that youthful heart and
Right.
and talk what about having goals has done for you, where you have this big ass goal, and there's like a whole list of them. We're focused on just mountain climbing for right now, which is big enough. And a lot of people would say, okay, that's it. I'm going to now go down and, as you said, watch TV, which and nobody would, like, no problem. And this guy's already accomplished so much. But what is it about all these goals that you have out there that has driven you? I mean, what is your mental makeup in terms of constantly reinventing what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think setting goals is a big factor in success. Setting big goals, doing your due diligence to find out how to achieve those goals, actually attempting to achieve the goals, learning from your mistakes. I always tell people when they ask me, well, what's the physical preparation? What's your physical regimen to get ready? And I always tell them what it is. And, it's pretty rigorous and tough, but mental commitment, mental fortitude, mental toughness is what gets you across the goal line, to use an NFL metaphor. Mm-hmm. It's mental commitment and mental toughness. And so goal setting is really important. And equally important is, once you set that goal, is committing yourself to achieve it, being willing to learn from your mistakes, visioning success, as you're attempting to accomplish these goals. Those are all really, really critical. But goal setting and then commitment, mental commitment are really critical to success.
Well,
I've done that my whole life. I started in, I was in college. I wanted to get into the best law school I could. So that was my goal. And I figured out how to do it and what would be necessary. And I was able to get into Stanford. And then when I got into Stanford, my goal was to graduate as high up the class as I could so I could get into a good law firm, and I was able to accomplish that. And then when I became a lawyer, I wanted to be the best lawyer that I could be, not only to provide for my family, but to realize that goal of success. And I had a lot of success in the law. And so it was really, for me, goal setting when I got to retirement, and mountaineering was sort of a natural part of my DNA.
Sounds like you just reshifted. Really, it was a pivot to refocus your energy on something new, but it was really that same passion that drove you from day one.
Exactly. The process is very much the same. The means by which you achieve that are different depending on what the goal is, but the process of goal setting, due diligence, mental commitment, mental fortitude, learning from your mistakes, listening to your body, especially in mountaineering, it's very similar, whatever phase you are in your life. So, for example, when I finished my last big mountain climb, Mount Everest, in 2014, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I'd done the 8 summits, the Karsten's Pyramid and Kosciuszko, making it 8. And so I decided, well, I want to do something a little closer to home and closer to my family. So I decided, I saw a movie on TV. It was a Discovery or History Channel series on the Mississippi River. And I thought, wow, I wonder if anybody's paddled down that river. Wouldn't that be fun? So that became my goal. I'd never sat in a canoe before I did that paddle. Maybe we'll talk about it later. But that became my goal. I did my due diligence, and then it was setting out to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I love that. The name of this podcast is called Finding Your Summit, about overcoming adversity and finding your way. And, we're kind of highlighting kind of the shiny objects of what you've been able to accomplish. And certainly you've accomplished a lot. But I think what I had discovered last night is, before you actually summited Everest on either side, there were a couple failures. And I think, part of that formula is perseverance, right? And there's obstacles, and you put that goal out there and you didn't make it. And that was a bummer. Like when I didn't make 217, And I originally made this goal. I just thought, oh, there's 7 mountains or 7 years. There you go. And I'm on like year 9 right now because of the pandemic and because of Mother Nature knocked me back. And, what was that like for you when you had this big goal? You'd been successfully bouncing around the world, climbing these things, and all of a sudden, you get pushed back and now you got to redo this whole thing over.
I'm glad you asked that question, Mark, because I've actually climbed Mount Everest 6 times. But 4 of those times I had to turn around. I was up on the southeast ridge on the south approach. Once I had to turn around. Then 3 times I had to turn around on the northeast ridge when I was climbing from the Tibet side. So yeah, I summited twice, but I didn't summit 4 times. And when you train so hard and there's a lot of cost and expense involved, as I'm sure you know, to get there. But more importantly, when you don't reach the goal and don't fulfill your dream, it's disappointing. And you need to deal with that. You need to learn how to deal with that. And to be honest with you, when I turned around the 4 times I did on Mount Everest, I didn't walk down with a frown on my face. I didn't want to say, well, who can I blame for this? Or why didn't I make it? Woe is me. No, when I turned around, I took that first step down all 4 times. I had a smile on my face because I thought, I am so privileged and so blessed to have the opportunity to even stand on this mountain. It's sacred ground. And I was thrilled to have that opportunity. And so I made the decision to turn. A couple of times it was because of weather. One time I was just out of gas. But when I made that decision to turn around and go down, I was disappointed. I felt bad about it. But honestly, I can tell you, I just figured I'll be back next year. This mountain's going to be here next year. I'm going to make it. I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I'm going to figure out what to do differently, how to train different. And I'm coming back and I'm going to reach the summit. And that was what motivated me the 6 times I was there, and 2 times I succeeded.
Wow, that's incredible.
4 times I turned around, I listened to my body. That's really important. And I just give you that advice for your trip for Lhotse and Everest is listen to your body. And nobody knows it better than you do. And when you feel it's not right, then you got to make the hard decisions.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a hurdle, and I think one of the things you've been able to do is having that optimistic personality of seeing things through the right lens when things don't always bounce your way. Right. And so, what you're essentially saying is you're looking at the opportunity that you've been afforded versus the disappointment that you just experienced.
That's exactly right. Like I said, I felt so privileged to even be there that it was hard to get too down on myself when I had to turn around and go down, because I knew I'd be back and I knew I would succeed. It's just a matter of time and learning, but I knew I would succeed.
So you finally summit on the Tibet side. Again, we've talked about coming from the north in 2014, as you've mentioned. And now you're sitting back in the comforts of your home in Southern California. I know you're surrounded by a gigantic family, and it looks like it's, you've got a lot of really just amazing positivity in terms of a great family unit you've been able. But now you're sitting here going, okay, what in the hell am I going to do next? And I've got this multiple kayaking trips. Like you said earlier, you never have even sat in a kayak, and now you're dreaming up this kayak, trip that you're going to go the length of the Mississippi, starting up in Minnesota, which I've been to, and floating all the way down, paddling, whatever you want to call it, all the way down to Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico. That's right. Insane. Yeah. I mean, thousands of miles, I'm sure. Like, tell me why you came up with that, and it was solo too, which is another amazing thing. Like, along the way, were you sleeping on the banks of the river, or were you going into little towns and there'd be, through La Crosse or something, and you'd stay there in Wisconsin? I mean, how did you make all this work?
Well, it was both. You really can't plan a canoe trip down a big river like the Mississippi. You can't plan it precisely because you're dealing with weather, you're dealing with current, you're dealing with traffic, you're dealing with rapids, you're dealing with a lot of changes over the course of the trip. And so you don't really know where you're gonna end up at the end of the day because of that. And so I I would say on my Mississippi River trip, which was in 2019, it was 2,400 miles, like you say, from the source of the river down to the Gulf of Mexico. Took me 120 days because I was stopping a lot and visiting the cities, and I was blogging about it and writing history as I was seeing it. And so I spent probably 70% of my time pulling off to the side of the river and camping on sandbars or along the shore. And when I could pull into a city along the way to reprovision or whatever, that's when I would stay in little motels. And that was great because I got to meet up with people, and I was able to order off a menu and sleep in a nice warm bed, take a shower, which you don't get many of on the river or at Everest, by the way, I'll tell you. Yeah. You don't get many showers. So I was spending probably 70% of my time camping out, which I loved. I really enjoyed it, cooking your own meals and sleeping in a tent, and about 30% in cities. And I met such wonderful people along the way. The best part of that trip by far were the people I met. They were so kind and generous. They would invite me into their homes, let me sleep in a bed, take a shower, wash my filthy clothes in their washing machines. They would take me into the city to reprovision as I needed to reprovision. I had several people give me the keys to their truck and say, here, take my truck.
Wow.
Go in and get what you need in the city, explore a little bit. They tell me about the sites. And so that was one of the best parts of the trip, was the people that I met. So it was a combination of camping and staying in motels, but most of all, the best part of it was the wonderful people I met. So generous. They would do anything for you. I got to tell you one story, Mark, if I can.
Go ahead.
To give you an idea about how trusting and generous the Midwesterners and Southerners are, I pulled over to the side of the river because I saw a store where I could reprovision up on the shore in a little city. So I parked my canoe, locked it up there, and walked up to the store and picked out the things that I needed. And the lady came out and I gave her my credit card. And she says, sir, I'm sorry, but we don't take credit cards here, only cash. And I said, well, ma'am, I don't have any cash. All I've got is this credit card. And she said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Get what you need. I'll give you my address. And when you get home, you can mail me your check. That kind of trusting and generosity just blew me away. And I told her I can't do that. And so the next thing I know, her mom comes out and drives me to an ATM so I could get the cash I needed to pay for those supplies. Awesome. But where would that ever happen in an urban center where they just mail me a check when you get home? And you're telling a stranger.
Yeah, I mean, you're a stranger, but you also have a very great trusting vibe that comes out, and I'm sure you picked up on that too. So if that wasn't enough to float down that particular river, the Mississippi, now you're going to take on the Missouri River going from Montana, which, by the way, where you're going to put in Three Forks, I built a ranch many years ago outside of Bozeman, not too far away from where you're going to put in. So I know that area very well. And your goal is to paddle 2,341 miles this next year, all the way to St. Louis.
This year, you're right. This late May, I plan to head down the Missouri rivers. I'm going to do a reverse Lewis and Clark expedition. They paddled up the river. I'm going down the river.
Yeah, smart man.
So I'm going to start in Three Forks, and I'll paddle down the Missouri River by myself to where it converges with the Mississippi right near St. Louis. And then I probably will head on down the Mississippi to the Gulf, even though I already did that in 2019. I enjoyed it so much. That's probably what I'll do. So it's going to be a long trip. It's going to be a lot tougher than the Mississippi because the river is a little more challenging than the Mississippi. The Missouri River is, and it's much more remote. You don't see many towns and villages along the way, so it's going to require a lot of good planning to make it down the Missouri. But I'm really looking forward to that. That's my next big trip.
Well, bring your fishing pole. There's a lot of big trout floating, all the way down there. So along with this, as I'm listening to all this, and you've got 50 million grandkids, I'm just thinking about this. So, like, could any one of them meet to say, "Hey, Grandpa, I'm going to be in Montana," or pick your city and town and jump in and do like a guest paddle for 20 miles?
I doubt that that's going to happen because my children and grandchildren are either in school or my grandchildren are in school or they have jobs. All my children and their spouses have jobs. So it's not so easy for them to do that. But they will visit me. For example, on the Mississippi River, I had 4 members of my family join me in Memphis. And we spent a week there in Memphis, had a great time, went to the Elvis Museum and the Sun City Studio, the Civil Rights Museum. We had a great time in Memphis with my family. I was there for a week with them. And then in New Orleans, when I got to New Orleans, other members of my family joined me there, and we spent a week in New Orleans and did a lot of sightseeing. So I'll see them, but I kind of doubt they'll be able to paddle with me. Plus, it's a pretty challenging river, and I think I'd be pretty nervous if I had a child or a grandchild along that didn't have some experience at dealing with the rapids and the currents and the towboats and the wing dams. So I don't think they'll be with me on the river, but they'll certainly visit me, I'm sure.
That's great. That's great. That's what it's all about, family.
Yeah. I have my wife and I have been married 58 years. We have 4 children and 14 grandchildren and 1 great grandchild. So I'm really blessed with a great family. They're very understanding. They let me do this. They're not always happy, especially when I was on Everest. They weren't real happy with those trips in Burke, but they support me, and I think I've earned their trust with the many times that I've made the right call in the mountains.
So for all those who are listening right now, you're starting to see a pattern here. I believe I'm talking to the real life Indiana Jones. I want to ask you about the Camino de Santiago, which is a 600-mile walk that you did. Was it in the Pyrenees? Is that where that took place?
Across the Pyrenees. I'm going to do that in the fall. I had that planned for last year with a friend. It's a 600-mile. I'm going to do the Camino Frances. There's about 8 different approaches, but I'm doing the Camino Frances, which starts in France, crosses northern Spain, and ends up at the Cathedral of St. James the Apostle. And I had planned it for the fall with a friend of last year, and we got washed out by the virus. Spain is not allowing flights from the U.S., so we had to cancel that trip. So I'm rescheduling that for late fall this year. Although the way things are going now, especially in Europe with the COVID, that may get canceled too. But I hope to do the Camino. It's a pilgrimage. It's a very spiritual journey, which is one of the main reasons I'm doing it. And everybody that's done it has said how wonderful it is. You go through these little towns and villages. They have great hostels and hotels and great food and wine. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope I can bring it together. We'll have to see.
And as you do that, do you set yourself up with a tour guide so they're always forwarding your luggage and provisions, things like that, of the next town?
We won't have a tour guide. That isn't really necessary. The trail finding isn't that difficult. There are some people who will have these services carry their gear or drive their gear from one town to the next. That's an option. I don't think I'm going to pursue that option. I think I'd rather have it on my back. And so I don't plan to do that. Maybe I'll change my mind once I get there. But that is an option that you can take, but you don't really need guides for the Camino de Santiago. It's a pretty well-established trail and a lot of people. So, and phone connections and whatnot, so that if you get into trouble, you can get the help you need.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I've been in the Pyrenees, and it's an amazing place to be. Look, I could keep going, and I do want to ask you about one more thing that you've done: bungee cord jump. I mentioned that at the top of the hour here, and I have done that one time down in New Zealand, and it looked like that might have been in the same spot.
Yeah, this was in Nepal. It's I think it's the longest bungee jump in Asia, the 4th longest in the world, and as you know, it takes a lot of courage to get out there and step out on that platform.
Yeah.
And all you see is space and a roaring river. And it took me a while. I have a video of that jump on my website if anybody wants to see it. But yeah, that took a lot of courage to do that. I don't know that I'd do it again.
I've jumped out of airplanes and you're so high
Okay.
up that everything looks so small, like it looks like a topographical map that
Right.
it's not really relevant. And this bungee cord jump that I did in New Zealand many years ago at the time was the world's highest at 250 feet. And I was jumped just like you, jumped right down into a canyon, into a river. And
Yeah.
you're looking at the rock that you're supposedly going to hit if things go wrong. And you can see the tree, it's just more relative. And it scared the hell out of me, by the way.
Yeah. It's scary. It's scarier for me than Mount Everest
Oh my God.
because it's just so, it's just not intuitive to jump off a platform, like jumping out of a plane. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But it was fun. Once
Yeah.
I can say it was fun. I look back on it, but at the time I was terrified.
Yeah. No, listen, we had the exact same experience.
Yeah.
So listen, I want to, you mentioned just a minute ago where you can be found on your website. That's actually where I saw some of this different stuff in your content. It's a cool website. Can you just let us know where people can find you?
Yes, I have a website called 8summits.com. You got to spell out the EIGHT summits, one word.com. And in that website, I got a lot of content in there. I just revamped it about 2 months ago, so it's completely redone. And I have a blog that I use for my trips. So every couple of days on my blog, I'll file a report, and it gets posted on my website. And if your listeners register their email address in the blog, then they'll get an alert by email that I've posted something, so they don't have to keep checking. They'll get an alert that I posted a report. And I blog all my trips, and I'll blog all my future trips. And I have a section in there with some articles that I've written, short articles. I've got a section about my family and about me, about my background. And then most importantly, I've got a gallery where I have all of my trips, movies of all of my trips, motorcycle, rafting, mountaineering, are all put together in movies that I've created. And I post those in the gallery. So if anyone's interested in seeing what a Mississippi River trip looks like, or a climb on the north side of Everest, or a motorcycle trip, they can watch these videos. So I'm real proud of the website. It took me a long time. I built it many years ago, and like I said, I just revamped it, and I'm happy with how it has turned out.
Well, you should be. Your life is full of accomplishment. And the thing I like about you, and I think the similarity and the reason why I feel this kindred spirit with you is just, it feels like you haven't rested on your laurels. People have been very complimentary to me, and like, you've accomplished so much, but I just look at how much more I haven't done. All these things that I've never done, the Camino De Santiago, I've never done the Mississippi River, and I got a lot of paddling to do, to catch up.
You'll get some ideas. I have a whole list, probably 5 years worth of adventures I have planned ahead of me. You mentioned the Camino and the Missouri River, but I'm also going to do sometime in the near future the Transamerica Trail, which is an off-road motorcycle trip across the U.S., all of it on off-road traveling. So I'm going to buy a sport bike, and you start on the East Coast and you ride across the country on dirt roads and through forests and across rivers and streams and deserts and alpine peaks. And that really appeals to me. So that's on my list. And I was just informed, a friend of mine from Britain wrote me and wants me to do a ocean race from San Francisco to Hawaii. It's 2,400 nautical miles of rowing, really rough rowing. So I'm thinking about that. The oldest person to climb Mount Everest, as you know, I'm sure, is a Japanese man who did it when he was 80 many years ago. And I turn 80 in a couple of years, and so who knows? Maybe I'll go back and go back to my old buddy Mount Everest in a couple of years. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, maybe you'll call me up and ask me too.
No, you go with me. I'll be your Sherpa. How about that?
I love that. I love that. All right, listen. I'm so honored that you had graced me with coming on this podcast, and it's just like this is what life is all about, and it's just getting knocked down and keep getting up and keep pursuing your dreams and your goals and getting after it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. I really enjoy your program, and I appreciate you inviting me to share my story. Really do.
Okay, there he is, the one, the only Bill Burke. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, and thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. Okay, if you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisionnfl.com. That's Mark, M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.